Welcome. It all begins here, in the forest. This is where Anderson's quality process starts. For over 60 years, Anderson has been dealing with select foresters and loggers across the Southeast, buying only the best timber to go into our Anderson products. Only about 5% of the trees in the forest are good enough to be cut for an Anderson hardwood floor. Selected trees must be at least 18 to 22 inches in diameter and have at least 16 to 18 feet of growth before the first branches to be suitable to produce furniture or flooring-grade veneer. And all of our trees must be harvested from forests whose loggers follow industry best practice standards designed to protect and maintain a sustainable resource. Since its beginning, Anderson has created a corporate culture that respects our environment and is committed to protecting it for future generations. Anderson harvests trees like red oak, white oak, hickory, and pecan from forests in nearby southern states, while our maple and birch trees come from forests in the Northeast and Canada. Once cut, about 30 trees, or approximately 3,000 board feet of timber, are loaded onto a truck like this, and are delivered to one of our veneer factories in South Carolina, Maine, or Mississippi. This is our veneer factory in Walterboro, South Carolina. Ready to take a tour? Trucks arrive each day with their load of logs. Their first stop is the scales, where they are weighed. This is Ed Ross. He's our yard boss, and he's the expert. Loggers know he only allows the best logs to become an Anderson floor. Once weighed, the logs are unloaded, and each log is inspected for splits, knots, and defects. Then he grades them for quality, determining their suitability for face grade or core material, and measures for diameter and usable length. This determines the expected yield for face and core veneer for each log. This information is recorded on a metal log tag that is attached to the log prior to its placement in one of our log storage piles, and it's also recorded into the plant's inventory database. Logs are then moved to storage, where they will be kept constantly wet so they will not dry out or begin to split. To protect the surrounding environment and to keep the tannins from the wood from polluting the local water table, the logs are stored in containment pools, and the water used to keep the logs alive is recirculated. Logs can be kept in this condition for over a year, but thanks to our customers, none of these logs have been in our yard for over 45 days. When ready for processing, the logs are loaded into one of our 6 gigantic cookers. They measure 25 feet front to back, 25 feet side to side, and 16 feet deep. We use these steam-heated cookers to soften the wood fibers so that it can be peeled into veneer without checking or splitting on the lathe. If you've ever had to cook a 10-pound bag of potatoes, you know you wouldn't put all of the potatoes into the pot of boiling water at the same time. If you did, when it came time to take them out, either the big potatoes would be too hard, or the small potatoes would be too soft and fall apart. The same holds true for logs. The answer, we put the biggest logs in first and take them out last. That way, when the logs get to the lathe, they are perfectly ready for making quality veneer. The cooking process takes about 24 hours, so right after the cookers are unloaded for today's production, we begin loading the next day's requirements into them. Once we remove the log from the cooker, the first production step is to remove the bark from the log. Hickory and pecan bark, with a little help from the knuckle boom, is simply stripped from the tree. Oak and other species need a little more aggressive process. They are stacked, and the bark is removed from each log, one log at a time. Anderson's manufacturing process uses every bit of the tree. Nothing is wasted. The bark is chipped, transported by conveyor and stored where it will be, loaded on trucks, and sold as mulch. Once the bark is removed, the tree is carried by conveyor to an automated chainsaw. The next step cuts the log into 44-inch sections. But first, splits are removed from the ends. Scrap ends are removed from the production line and are transported to our chipper, where they too will be ground into mulch or fuel for our boilers. Now we're ready to load the log onto the lathe. Once loaded, we have to round the log. This removes most of the irregularities from the veneer. The scrap veneer from this process is also ground for fuel. Okay, it's time to peel the log. Don't blink. This step happens so fast you're liable to miss it. When we get down to the log's core, we have to stop peeling. This is because we've reached the diameter of the lathe's mandrels, and the log's core doesn't make a very good veneer anyway. The veneer exits the lathe, where it will be cut into board-length sections by a clipper. The blades used on the lathe are made from chromium carbide steel, so they hold their edge. A freshly sharpened blade is placed on the lathe every morning and is changed out every 2 hours, even less if they hit a hidden nail in the log. At this point, they have to be sent to the knife room to be resharpened. The machine used to sharpen the blades is unlike any other we know of. Its origin comes from the Navy machine shop, where a similar machine was used to set angles on submarine dive planes. Here, a technician will spend 2 hours resharpening and calibrating the knife. As the veneer leaves the lathe, note how it is clipped to length. After clipping, the veneer goes down the inspection line, where blanks that are less than full size are pulled and stacked. These partial blanks can be trimmed and spliced offline to produce full-size sheets. Notice the steam coming off the veneer. If you could touch the veneer right now, it would be very hot and very wet. The next step is to take the veneer and place it in the drying oven to reduce the moisture content to 6% or less. The drying ovens, as well as the cookers we saw earlier, are fed by our boiler that produces 18,000 to 20,000 pounds of steam per hour, and pressures inside the boiler reaches over 200 psi. The boiler uses scrap wood chips and sawdust from the manufacturing process for fuel. This is automatically loaded into the boiler when our sensors indicate that temperatures begin to fall below set levels. When the sheets come out of the oven, they are stacked on pallets, and once they cool down, are ready to load onto our truck to take them to the pressing and finishing plants for final assembly. However, there is one last step. Throughout the manufacturing process, veneer sheets are pulled for quality inspections every 15 minutes. They are brought here to the quality lab, where they are checked for dimensional consistency, side to side, and across the sheet. Moisture levels are also checked to make sure the veneer remains within moisture tolerance. Only when they meet all of Andersen's exacting standards are they ready to be used in an Andersen, Appalachian, or vintage product.